Heath Ledger, a brilliant actor in both Hollywood and indie films, a heartthrob who fought typecasting with roles that showed a stunning range of talent.
Heath Ledger was perhaps one of the most brilliant and complex actors of his generation.
He's a natural performer. He's really focused and disciplined and willing to do things that are outside of the box.
When he died at 28, Heath left behind a significant body of work and an impressive legacy.
Heath Ledger was a brilliant guy. He was very sincere. He seemed to me to be incredibly sensitive.
He left a will that threatened to tear apart the loved ones he left behind.
Absolutely, Heath Ledger would have wanted to mention his daughter in his will and take care of her.
During his life, what mattered most was his art. Yet in death, Heath's estate continues to grow. The fame, the fortune, the legacy of Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger was one of the greatest actors of this century's first decade. A tall, silver screen Adonis, Ledger was as talented as he was handsome. He was a gifted chameleon who transformed himself with every role to create distinct and memorable characters. And he carefully and selectively chose those roles, and chose them well.
Heath Ledger first gained indie cred and then Hollywood credibility. And we know that Hollywood credibility means lots of money, especially when you've played a key character in a Batman film. Heath Ledger wanted to take on a variety of roles. In fact, he turned down many roles because he wanted to keep the edgy characters and not be stuck in the repetitive mode that some actors find themselves in. And he definitely wanted to overcome the stereotype of being just another pretty boy. And he did.
Heath honed his skills with a wide range of television and indie film work in his native Australia, before gaining wider fame in Hollywood. His talent made a huge impact around the world. But it seems his need for perfection and his endless self-criticism may have led to his death on January 2nd, 2008 in a New York apartment. A cocktail of prescription drugs are found in his system.
In my mind, Heath Ledger was perhaps one of the most brilliant and complex actors of his generation. He was a modern-day Marlon Brando, and sadly, he died way before his time.
His performances are immortal and will be enjoyed by film lovers for decades to come. Though Heath Ledger's financial legacy continues to grow, money was never what drove the star. Yet his talents and success brought him incredible wealth. This is the story of all that he left behind. Heathcliff Andrew Ledger is born in the remote city of Perth in Western Australia on April 4th, 1979, into a well-known family tied to the region's history. The Ledger family had run an important foundry, and a charitable trust named after Heath's great-grandfather, Sir Frank Ledger, is known for supporting the area's universities. Heath's father, Kim, is a mining engineer and race car enthusiast. His mother, Sally Bell, is a French teacher.
She named her kids after Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights characters, Heathcliff and Catherine. Of course, the kids were like Heathcliff and Catherine. Heath Ledger, he shortened his name, and his sister shortened her name to Kate.
When Heath is 10, his parents separate but remain friendly. They each have another child, and Heath gains two half-sisters, Olivia and Ashley.
Heath was always close with his family. In fact, he had the word chaos, K-A-O-S, tattooed on his wrist. And that not only exemplified, his life, as in chaotic, but it also was a tribute to his mother and his three sisters.
Heath attends Guildford Grammar School, an exclusive British-style all-boy academy. He's a good student and athletic. Heath seems good at everything he tries, from field hockey to junior chess. Throughout his life, he'll play at least one chess game a day.
Outside of his schoolwork, Heath was very active in sports. He surfed, he loved to skateboard, he was a big fan of go-karts. I mean, this kid was a fun-loving kid. But the bottom line for him was his love for art. In fact, his bedroom walls were covered in abstract paintings.
Heath's older sister, Kate, is an actor and takes him to see Shakespearean plays. Heath gets bitten by the acting bug too. At age 10, he plays Peter Pan in a local theater production. Kate's agent takes him on and gets him his first screen role when he's 13, a small part in a family film. Heath is a big fan of old black and white movie musicals and loves singing and dancing. Gene Kelly is his idol, and he manages to teach himself to dance like his hero.
The fact that Heath taught himself to dance like Gene Kelly at age 13 shows that he's a natural performer, that he's really focused and disciplined, and willing to do things that are outside of the box for a 13-year-old boy.
In his early teens, Heath choreographs an 8-minute all-boy dance piece with 60 of his schoolmates, and they win a national competition. During his teens, Heath acts in school plays and gets small film and television roles. But very early on, he starts to make strategic decisions.
In 1996, he was cast in a television series called Sweat. So he had the choice of two roles. One, he could play an Olympic swimmer, or he could play a gay Olympic bicyclist hopeful. Which did he choose? Of course, he chose the latter because he was always looking for the complex character.
Sweat is canceled after 26 episodes, but Heath becomes good friends with one of his cast members, Martin Henderson, who's living in Sydney. Martin is 4 years older and sees something special in Heath. He knows Heath won't get enough opportunities in Perth and urges him to move to Sydney to give acting a real shot. Heath takes his graduation exams a year early, borrows gas money from his parents, and drives 2,600 miles across the country. He arrives in Sydney with a small bag, his surfboard, and 69 cents in his bank account.
Heath Ledger was only about 17 years old at the time, so it's not surprising that whatever money that he would have earned from the project, he quickly spent through and was just as broke at the end as when he started.
In the metropolis of Sydney, Heath is introduced to a much wider world of film, TV, and theater. It isn't long before Heath lands a film role, Black Rock.
Outside of Australia, the film Black Rock made very little noise. But in his home country of Australia, the film grossed over $1 million. And it was nominated for 5 Australian Film Awards. So he was definitely making his mark on the home front.
It's a small part. Heath doesn't even appear on the poster, but it gets him noticed. And it leads to a series of other roles that allow him to hone his skills, build his reputation, and pay his bills doing what he loves. Heath's big breakthrough comes in 1996 with Roar, a U.S. finance medieval fantasy series that is shot in Queensland, Australia. He stars as a Celtic prince, often clad in no more than a loincloth.
Heath Ledger received his first substantial paycheck for Roar at the age of 18, and this was the first time that American audiences had seen him.
For Heath, the role is life-changing. He gains camera experience and a cult following among young ladies in America, and he falls for his American co-star.
He began a relationship with a much older woman in Lisa Zane. The studio Fox was really hyped on this series. So, consequently, he follows Lisa Zane to America, gets himself an American agent.
But even though by 1997 he's a hot property in Australia, Heath is a nobody in North America. Unable to land any American roles, he eventually goes back to Australia to make a couple of small films. But his time in LA was far from wasted. He developed a close friendship with a young writer and director named Matt Amato, who later starts a film and video artists collective called The Masses. Heath's connections eventually land him a starring role in the 1999 Hollywood teen comedy, 10 Things I Hate About You.
This was the kind of role that most actors would kill for. He gets to play the outsider character, and yet at the same time, he gets to sing, he gets to dance, he gets to cavort around the floor, wooing his love interest, dancing just like his hero, Gene Kelly.
10 Things I Hate About You was Heath Ledger's breakout role. He received a $100,000 paycheck for this role, which in today's dollars would be $140,000. That's a lot of money for a 20-year-old.
10 Things more than doubles its budget at the U.S. box office and makes Heath very marketable.
He rents an apartment in the trendy Beechwood Canyon area, which is picturesque and home to lots of actors. He also purchased his first new car.
Offers for more teen heartthrob roles pour in, but Heath wants to avoid being typecast. His plan is to stay on his game and choose his roles carefully.
Heath actually said, I had to destroy my career in order to build it up. And this was really interesting because despite all the work that he had behind him, for the next year, better part of a year, the guy's living on ramen noodles and water, all the while just looking, just reading scripts and trying to find those interesting roles that he was born to play.
Heath's uncompromising stance is about to pay off, big time. By age 20, Heath Ledger has already landed his first role in a major Hollywood movie and banked a $100,000 fee. But rent in LA is expensive, and he spent a year without any income, living on next to nothing so his money will last. Now he's holding out for a role that he feels is the right career move. In the year 2000, Heath auditions for a supporting role as Mel Gibson's eldest son in the historical drama The Patriot.
He walked into the casting room and he blew all his lines. He was embarrassed. He apologized and he walked out of the room thinking, I don't have a chance at this. But at the same time, the director of this film, Roland Emmerich, he's sitting there and he's looking and he's watching the reaction of the females on his crew in the casting department, and they're all rooting for this guy to come back and nail it. So what did he do? He came back and he nailed it.
Heath beats out Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Felipe for the role. While working on the film, Heath saves up his per diem money and gives it to a friend who helped him years ago and is now struggling. But he also treats himself to a muscle car and a Land Rover.
Heath Ledger's starting to enjoy the financial success that's coming with his burgeoning acting career. So it's no surprise, like most young Hollywood actors, that he'd want to splurge a little and buy some fun cars and other toys.
Heath is turned down for a number of roles, and he passes on others. He's offered good money to play Spider-Man, but is so bent on being considered a serious actor, he says no.
It's one thing to turn down a role for, vanity's sake, but, in the US, turning down the actual opportunity to play Spider-Man, not really a good career move when you think about it. I mean, come on, ask Robert Downey Jr.
By being particular, Heath lands his biggest break yet. Late in 2000, he's offered the romantic lead in A Knight's Tale, a silly but charming adventure comedy with a great rock soundtrack. Heath plays a knight squire who impersonates his deceased master and fights for the love of a young noblewoman.
It was heavy, it was hot, it was sweaty, it was uncomfortable. But you had little to complain about. You're sitting in armor. You don't get that opportunity very often,
It's a substantial role with a huge paycheck.
It was reportedly $3 million. That's a lot of money, even for Hollywood.
That paycheck gives him the capital to buy his first home, a 5,000 square foot, 5-bedroom mansion in the hills of LA's trendy Los Feliz neighborhood.
It's not just a home, this was an estate. This is a big purchase for a 21-year-old. He ended up moving into the estate, if you want to call it that, with his then-girlfriend, Naomi Watts.
A Knight's Tale secures Ledger's status as an A-list actor. The studio even agrees to fly 14 of his closest friends up from Perth for the opening. But box office juice comes with strings. The studio is clearly grooming him to be a matinee idol, which causes Heath to panic.
I don't believe that Heath wanted to be a star. He wanted to be an excellent actor, and he wanted to prove something to himself. He didn't need the adoration of all the fans, and I don't think he was in it for the money either.
To try and shed his heartthrob image, Heath's next role is as a troubled young prison guard who commits suicide in the low-budget indie Monsters Ball. Heath gets what he wants. He shows Hollywood that he has what it takes to be a genuine character actor.
There was a woman, and frankly, it's always a woman when it comes to Heath Ledger, but this woman, Marcia Ross, she was the head of casting at Disney. And she looked at Heath Ledger and she knew right then and there that this guy was a star and would slay the ladies, if you will. Marcia Ross called him a character actor trapped in a movie star's body.
Heath had serious sex appeal, and he started getting a reputation around Hollywood as a playboy.
Wave at us. Give one each. Spit on us. Give one pin.
Young Heath was named one of People magazine's 50 most beautiful people in 2001, and I think he deserved it.
Over the next 2 years, Heath builds his career through a range of character roles in Australian and US films. His fees per film range from $50,000 for a low-budget indie up to $2 million for a Hollywood project. It's around this time in 2003 that Heath decides to make out a will.
It was really smart of Heath Ledger at the young age of 24 to be proactive enough to make out a will. Most 24-year-olds, even with the type of money that he has, don't do that.
But Heath is more focused on the roles than the money.
When Heath said, you know, I have to destroy my career to build it up, he wasn't kidding around. And basically what he was saying was, I really have to eliminate all this commercial filth from my life. You know, it was almost spiritual. He was almost on a mission. He just wanted to be reborn.
Everything Heath has done to develop his talent has prepared him for an incredibly powerful role. In 2004, he nabs a challenging opportunity as a cowboy repressing his homosexuality in Brokeback Mountain.
The movie was a massive hit, and you can see why. It was the way he played that role against type. Playing a closeted gay guy, I mean, what was he gonna do with that? Play it down. I mean, if you watch his character in that, you're seeing a guy who did the whole role just completely inside of himself. Jaws clenched, muscles tightened, just very withdrawn, and it worked. It worked in a big way, and consequently, he became a major movie star.
The intensity of the process makes it difficult for Heath to leave the character behind at night and fall asleep. This will be something that he'll deal with many more times as he challenges himself with diverse roles. Heath is nominated for 3 Best Actor awards and wins the SAG Award. He later admits that not winning the Oscar comes as a relief.
If you win an Oscar at age 26, where do you go from there? I mean, there's really nowhere else to go. So I think Heath was relieved because he wasn't in it for the glory anyway, but also, how do you top that?
Brokeback Mountain changes Heath's life in another way. While shooting, he falls in love with actress Michelle Williams, who plays his wife in the film.
Heath's co-star, Jake Gyllenhaal, noticed the sparks flying immediately when he met Michelle. Heath and Michelle had an instant connection.
My life changed certainly from meeting Michelle, girls thanks to Brokeback Mountain.
After shooting 3 more films, Casanova, Lords of Dogtown, and The Brothers Grimm, Heath and Michelle decide to move to Australia to be closer to his family and start a family of their own. Heath buys a $4.45 million 3-story house in Bronte Beach, an exclusive suburb of Sydney. He and Michelle renovate extensively, adding a 1,700-bottle wine cellar and a home cinema with tiered seating and Tasmanian oak-paneled walls. While in Australia, Heath co-stars in the film Candy, playing a young heroin addict trying to kick his habit. He meets with a junkie at a clinic who shows him how to inject safely using a prosthetic arm. Back home, partying with old friends, the rumors begin to swirl, speculating about his own drug use.
Heath Ledger was known to be very generous with his money in a free-flowing way. One of the ways that people try to feel accepted is that. That's a very common addictive behavior, is to buy the drugs and to have a party. It feels like you're part of something. It feels like you have friends. It makes him feel that he's a part of rather than separate from. He wants to feel like, I'm not a big movie star, I'm just one of the guys here.
Australia was supposed to be a sanctuary for Heath and Michelle, but in less than 2 years, the dream of a quiet life in Oz sours.
Although the media pretty much learned to leave him alone at his home in Perth, Australia, he'd drop into Sydney and they'd be flying helicopters in with paparazzi stalking him everywhere he went.
One photographer even claims Heath attacked him on the set of Candy, but no charges are laid, as witnesses deny the photographer's story. With Michelle pregnant, the couple returns to the US. Heath sells his house in Los Feliz and buys one in LA from Ellen DeGeneres. Heath also buys a second house in Brooklyn's Boerum Hill area, where he and Michelle plan to spend most of their time. In 2005, Heath's career is shining.
He shows up at the Venice Film Festival repping not one, not two, but 3 films. He's got starring roles in Brokeback Mountain, Casanova, and, of course, The Brothers Grimm, as directed by his hero and his mentor, Terry Gilliam.
The year also marks a turning point in his personal life. In late October, Heath and Michelle's daughter, Matilda Rose, is born. Heath embraces fatherhood completely and stops working for about a year.
Really preoccupied with raising our daughter and birthing our daughter.
When Heath Ledger's daughter Matilda was born, he gave up his marijuana and alcohol habit with very good intention. The problem is when addicts try to just cold turkey, it doesn't really work all that well. It's very much a process to get off the drugs that they're using and then also to maintain sobriety. It isn't the kind of thing where it's a light switch, you make a decision and it's over.
But in late January 2006, at a party after the Screen Actors Guild Awards, Heath is befriended by a trio of partiers who take him to a cocaine binge party at the infamous Chateau Marmont Hotel. Unbeknownst to Heath, one is actually a reporter for People magazine, and the other 2 are paparazzi.
These tabloid skells actually had the nerve to film him while he was at his worst, doing all those drugs. He caught on to that and he was like, whoa, what's up? He was really pissed off.
The idea that he was entrapped by People magazine or bad people is crazy. He went with them. It was a decision that he made. It just demonstrates that he was outmatched by his addictions, that all the good intention and knowing that he had a baby at home wasn't enough to keep him sober. So when push comes to shove and when you're right there and you're faced with it and somebody's dumping lines out on the coffee table, you're defenseless. The answer is, don't be with people dumping lines out on the coffee table.
Not long after, Us Weekly reports that Michelle had driven Heath to a rehab facility frequented by celebrities due to his use of heroin, cocaine, a variety of pills, and alcohol. According to the article, Heath refused to check in and vowed to clean up on his own. Heath's publicist, however, denies it ever happened.
The promise is ridiculous. At that point, he needed to be in treatment. He needed to develop his own program of recovery. So I promise I'm not going to do heroin anymore. Doesn't go very far. And I think it was evidence that he'd made the promise before. He'd probably made the promise to her many, many, many times before she actually took him to rehab. So it's not something that he was going to be able to do.
Growing tensions in Heath and Michelle's relationship lead to a painful separation. But he's about to star in the role of his life, which will cement his fortune and his legacy. With 13 films under his belt in just 8 years, Heath Ledger is a young A-list actor known for reinventing himself with every role. After winning accolades for a stunning performance in Brokeback Mountain, he's taking a break to be a full-time dad. But by 2006, his relationship with Michelle Williams is on the rocks, and rumors of drug and alcohol abuse abound. But it's then that Heath is offered a role he can't refuse: supervillain the Joker in The Dark Knight. The director is Christopher Nolan, an innovative storyteller known for bridging the gap between art house and blockbuster films.
Heath's agent said he never wanted to do a summer blockbuster movie, but I think the role of the Joker in Batman appealed to him because there was depth and intensity. He could really dig into this role, and that's why he decided to do it.
Heath is obsessive about diving deeply into his characters, but this time he takes it up a notch. He locks himself in a hotel room for weeks and develops the character through exercises he chronicles in a journal.
He literally took a character that had existed in pop culture and transformed it into something that nobody had ever seen before.
The potential danger of being that intense in preparation for a role is a sense of isolation and disconnection from reality, and I wonder if that's part of the downfall.
Heath's creativity impresses everyone on set, as he also directs the videos the Joker makes within the film. But he can't shut off his racing mind, often sleeping only 2 hours a night. Sometimes he goes to Washington Square Park to play chess.
I would see Heath Ledger at Washington Square Park, and he looked like a homeless person. He didn't look like a movie star. And so, to me, I always felt that there was comorbidity and some other kind of psychiatric illness with him that went undiagnosed and untreated. It was probably very masked by his addictions.
Seeking relief from his insomnia, Heath increasingly turns to prescription medicines to help him relax and sleep, but they don't always work.
Chronic insomnia with addicts is a very common thing. People will cultivate all kinds of reasons why they can't give up their drugs. Nobody ever died of insomnia. There are lots of ways to manage insomnia without dangerous narcotics. So what I think is his claim of chronic insomnia may have actually been very valid, but it's also a way that was fanning the flame of his denial and giving him that out of, I have no option. If I don't take these drugs, I'm not going to sleep.
During the shoot for The Dark Knight, Heath and Michelle split for good. The custody dispute over Matilda creates additional stress. According to some reports, Michelle demands that Heath be drug tested before his visitations with his 2-year-old daughter. Around this time, Heath takes out a life insurance policy from the Minnesota-based Relia Star Company.
It really is interesting that Heath Ledger would think to take out this large life insurance policy less than 6 months before he died. Reportedly at the time, he was starting to spiral out of control with drug abuse. He was worried about his former girlfriend, Michelle Williams, taking him to court to claim custody of his daughter, and he was really going down a dangerous path. So to stop and have the foresight to buy a huge life insurance policy at the time was really quite interesting.
Maybe he knew that his life was not going to be very long. He wanted to make sure that Matilda was provided for. If you look at all the things that add up, the fascination with heroin, the life insurance policy, the promises. In retrospect, I would say that that was probably part of his suicide note.
After wrapping The Dark Knight, Heath is determined to start building a directing career.
Like many actors, Heath struggled with being overly self-critical and with wanting to be perfect. So when he didn't do something perfectly, it was hard on him. He may have wanted to take a break from acting and take a role behind the camera because it's less vulnerable to be a producer or director than it is to be in front of the camera.
With his continuing involvement in the film and video artist collective The Masses, Heath is interested in doing a documentary about controversial whaling conservationist Paul Watson.
Heath, at this point, is planning his own film directing debut. In fact, he had a project in mind. It was called The Queen's Gambit. It was a movie about the game of chess, and he was all set to star in that movie with the fantastic actress Ellen Page.
But Heath has promised to first do another film with his friend Terry Gilliam, the fantasy tale The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Heath loves working with Gilliam, but he initially delayed signing on due to insecurities.
It's not uncommon for actors to feel insecure about their work, but I wonder at this point in his career, after he's had tremendous success, if it's more related to anxiety or possibly an anxiety disorder.
The Dr. Parnassus shoot begins in December 2007. It's winter, and many scenes take place outdoors at night. Heath ends up with walking pneumonia, but refuses to stay away from the set.
Terry Gilliam himself said that Heath looked like hell, when he'd show up for the set. And whereas Gilliam would attribute that to stress and everything else, something dark was happening to Heath Ledger. He was going downhill fast.
Just out of sheer will and his raw talent, that would push him forward in his career. Everything else is falling apart in his life. Now has a custody battle. And the truth is, Michelle was right. He was not appropriate. He couldn't handle a small child. There's no way in the condition that he was in. And so it wasn't necessarily personal. It was really about child welfare. It's very difficult, I think, sometimes for these people to understand when the movie ends and when their life begins.
Heath attempts to cope with his insomnia through massages and prescription drugs. In mid-January, there's a break in filming. Heath uses the downtime to rest and socialize. On Monday, January 21st, 2008, he has breakfast out and buys 3 bags of groceries. He makes plans to see a friend the next day. On Tuesday, shortly after noon, his housekeeper arrives. When she goes to change a light bulb, she sees Heath asleep in bed and believes she hears him snoring. At 2:45 p.m., Heath's masseuse, Diana Wolozin, arrives at his apartment. At 3 p.m., she calls his cell phone. When he doesn't answer, she goes into his room to set up the massage table. She sees him in bed and tries to wake him. She can't. She calls 911. But at 3:36 p.m., Heath Ledger is pronounced dead. The remarkable young actor Heath Ledger is dead, leaving behind a 2-year-old daughter, a small fortune, an unfinished film, and devastated family, friends, and fans. 3 funerals are held, one in New York, one in LA, and a private one in Australia. Tributes pour in from movie studios, fans, and the Australian government. Heath's casket is sworn by nearly 50 paparazzi in New York before he begins his final journey home to Perth. He'll be laid to rest in the family plot shared by 2 of his grandparents. Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd says, "It is tragic that we have lost one of our nation's finest actors in the prime of his life."
The media frenzy that he had spent his entire career avoiding, it just ramped it up several notches after his death. That videotape, the one of him partying in the Chateau Marmont, that was used for a teaser in every single report about his death. Disgusting.
An initial autopsy shows a cocktail of prescription drugs in Heath's system, but it's deemed inconclusive, with further investigation required by the Office of the Medical Examiner. It's not clear how he obtained some of the medications, which were not prescribed by his doctors.
Heath Ledger was a brilliant guy, without question. I think he was very sincere. He seemed to me to be incredibly sensitive and have a very deep level of feeling. The truth is, Heath Ledger was not having a party. This was not fun for him. This wasn't something that he was wanting to do. This was something that was outside of his control, and he could not reel it in, and it was a very tragic outcome.
When Heath's will is read, key loved ones shockingly appear left out.
His will was written 3 years before he passed away. This was before he met Michelle Williams or had his daughter Matilda. So in some ways, it wasn't surprising that this will didn't leave any money to Michelle or his daughter Matilda. Instead, it left half the money to his 3 sisters and the balance of the money to his parents. One would think, though, that he would have updated this will after his daughter was born, which he didn't. While he didn't leave his daughter anything through his will, he did have a $10 million life insurance policy set aside for her.
Even though Heath didn't update his will, he was smart and put most of his assets into a secret trust.
Instead of passing assets through his will, Heath Ledger used a revocable living trust. And because of that, it's a private document. The public wouldn't know who he's leaving his money to or how they're receiving it. And instead, the trustee would carry out Heath's wishes to distribute his assets to his beneficiaries. What wasn't addressed was some of his real estate holdings, like the townhouse he had in Brooklyn and the property that he had in Australia as well, because those assets were kept in a separate trust.
Because Heath's assets are spread across the will and the secret trust, it's difficult to know the value of his estate. Some reports estimate $20 million. And on top of that, laws are different in Australia when it comes to publicly revealing the contents of a will.
Wills are public documents and pass through the probate court, and that means they're open for all the world to see, at least in our country. Now in Australia, it apparently is a little bit different because Heath Ledger's estate proceedings that took place in Australia were closed to the public. The records were sealed.
As the family struggles to figure out the full amount of Heath's estate, Heath's father, Kim, insists that Matilda and Michelle will be well looked after. But in a sensational turn, 2 of Heath's uncles, Hayden and Mike Ledger, claim that their brother Kim mismanaged their father's estate. They express concern that with Kim as executor, there will be no money left for Matilda. Michelle's estranged father, Larry Williams, is living in Sydney. Heath's uncles go so far as to advise him to tell his daughter to hire a lawyer. Larry, who is one of the world's best-known stock market traders, publicly challenges Kim to be transparent about the value of his son's fortune.
It's interesting that Larry steps in to help Michelle and Matilda at this point, since my understanding was they weren't that close before. But death and untimely death and a lot of money at stake may have been factors in him wanting to step in and protect his daughter and granddaughter.
Then things get even more complicated. Heath's uncle, Hayden, tells a Sydney newspaper that Heath may have fathered a secret love child when he was 17. If DNA tests prove Heath's paternity, his multi-million-dollar estate could be split between Matilda Rose and another child.
Heath didn't seem to be the kind of man who would knowingly abandon a child. It's interesting how many extended family members suddenly come out of the woodwork and share their stories with the media after a celebrity's death.
Claims are soon made that Heath's uncle was quoted out of context, but others feel the family feud is escalating. The mystery regarding the privacy around Heath's assets is finally solved. His millions and his mansions were cleverly hidden away in a secret trust account that the actor had amusingly named the Thank You for the Trust Trust.
Many celebrities go to great lengths to keep their privacy, and naming their trusts unusual names is one way to do that, which is exactly what we've seen here with Heath Ledger.
And that's why Heath Ledger used the trust that didn't even have his name on it, so when it was looked up in public records, nobody would have a clue that Heath Ledger really owned this property.
Then there's the question of Heath's life insurance policy. Attorney William Chernoff files a lawsuit in July 2008 on behalf of Heath's 3-year-old daughter, Matilda Rose, over the $10 million due to her as the beneficiary of Heath's life insurance policy. But lawyers for the insurance company insist on investigating further before paying out, arguing his death may have been a suicide.
The human body will only take so much of that abuse. You cannot put chemical on top of chemical. There is a cumulative effect. It's likely that he was drinking on the medication. That seems to be something that really takes people down quickly, is the prescription medication with alcohol. That will stop respiratory function very quickly. So I'm not really buying inconclusive. I'm buying severely addicted, very likely mentally ill. That is a lethal combination.
15 days after his death, the toxicology report shows Heath Ledger died from acute intoxication by combining at least 6 different prescription medications. But was it suicide? And what does the answer mean for the future of Matilda Rose? Along with leaving family, friends, and fans behind, Heath Ledger also left an unfinished film when he died suddenly on January 22, 2008. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, directed by Terry Gilliam, is Heath's final work.
Halfway through, Heath decided he wasn't going to turn up for work anymore.
After despairing that he will lose the film and that Heath's brilliant work won't be seen, Terry Gilliam comes up with an ingenious solution.
In an inspired move, what Gilliam did was he rewrote Heath Ledger's character in the film so that he could change his appearance over and over. Consequently, he had some of the best actors in the world playing him in different appearances. Terry Gilliam had no problem getting Jude Law, Johnny Depp, Colin Farrell to step up and donate their time and talent to fulfill the role of playing Heath Ledger.
I felt Heath was posthumously co-directing the film because he created these situations that we had to get out of.
All 3 actors generously donate their fees to Matilda Rose. Meanwhile, the insurance policy Heath took out 6 months before his death still has not been paid out to her.
Heath Ledger's $10 million life insurance policy was a big source of controversy because the insurance company didn't want to pay it. They investigated Heath Ledger's death and they claimed that it was either because of suicide or maybe because of drug use that he didn't properly disclose when he applied for that insurance policy. The insurance company even threatened to take the deposition of Mary-Kate Olsen, who was a good close friend of Heath Ledger who was around at the time that he passed away. Ultimately, the case did settle, and it kept everything private and out of court. And usually when that happens, it's a sign that most of that insurance money was paid over. The family was really critical of the insurance company, and the lawyers were saying publicly that they were just trying to squeeze the Ledger family for every dollar out of the life insurance policy that they could. So ultimately, you can assume from the settlement that the Ledger family got most of the money, if not all of it.
In August 2008, Heath's Hollywood Hills home sells for $2.5 million. The following month brings surprising news from the Ledger family, as Heath's father announces that the family will gift every penny of Heath's estate to Matilda Rose.
There was a lot of media coverage over this estate and whether there was going to be a big family fight because Heath Ledger didn't update his will. And when Heath Ledger's father came out publicly and said that the family was going to make sure that Matilda Rose got everything, it put these nasty public rumors and media speculation to rest and avoided a big public fight.
The success of The Dark Knight also adds to Matilda Rose's inheritance.
The Dark Knight grosses over $1 billion. Heath's contract included 1% of the gross on top of his $5 million fee. So that 1% adds another $10 million to his estate. That was a really good deal for Heath Ledger and a great deal for his estate.
Heath posthumously wins the Oscar for Best Actor for his role as the Joker in The Dark Knight, and his parents and sister Kate accept the award on his behalf.
The Joker really was a defining role for Heath Ledger, and there were reports that he became so engrossed in the character that he actually became the Joker when the camera wasn't rolling. But it was ironic that this big role of his only came out when he wasn't around to enjoy the fruits of it.
Hollywood certainly did take the news of Heath Ledger's death hard. Heath's death was robbery. It robbed the world of film, television, theater, and life itself of one talented dude. Fortunately, in his short life, he left such an incredible body of work that he's destined to go down in history as one of the world's finest actors.
The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus premieres at the Cannes Festival in May 2009.
And so in the final credits for the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, there's a special tribute to Heath Ledger. And in all humility, instead of taking, the auteur's credit, Terry Gilliam gave Dr. Parnassus to the world, as it said in the credits, a film from Heath Ledger and friends.
Heath's family decides to keep his legacy alive in another way, through the Heath Ledger Scholarship, awarded through the organization Australians in Film. Designed to mirror Heath's experience, the award gives talented young Aussies the support to break into Hollywood. Some of Australia's biggest stars contribute to the program.
Naomi Watts, Nicole Kidman, Hugh Jackman. These are the actors that stepped up to take what they remember about their friend Heath Ledger and give it away.
Heath had always made it clear that he hoped to build a career in theater. In 2011, a brand new theater in his hometown of Perth was named in his honor.
Who knows what Heath Ledger would have gone on to accomplish? Imagine if he was able to fulfill his dream to direct films. Who knows what kind of brilliance he would have given us? It's a tragic loss no matter how you look at it.
Heath Ledger's passing was a tragedy. He's a brilliant actor, and he was one of my favorites, and he will be greatly missed.
Heath Ledger is remembered fondly even to this day. His portrayal of the Joker is still talked about years after the film was released.
Fortunately, the bonus for his fans and, the people that will be introduced to his work for years to come, they get to keep an image of Heath Ledger burned in their imagination. And you can't put a price on that.